Welcome to Pera's Playbook. This is your host, Alex Pera. Let's open up our playbook and see who our guest is. Please enjoy.
Yeah.
Welcome to episode 167 of Pera's Playbook. Today I'm joined by Pierce Miller. He's a defensive tackle at Michigan Technological University. Happy to have Pierce here tonight. How's it going?
That's going great. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, glad to have you. You guys doing spring practice yet?
Yes, we are. Yeah, we have three practices left this week. Saturday is actually our spring game, so it's the cap off to the spring season. And then we will have 2 weeks left of school, and they can't do anything with us in that time as deemed by the NCAA. So,
Yeah. Has it been pretty chilly out? Have you guys been practicing out on Sherman?
yeah. So it's been cold, and it certainly has. There's been a lot of situations lately where like some of the guys will go no sleeves, some of the guys will, but last Saturday the weather was all over the place, and I think everybody was certainly chilled to the bone by the time we got done. It was not fun.
Yeah, it's a spring football in the Upper Peninsula is definitely a different animal than say if you were like somewhere in Texas or
Oh,
anywhere down
absolutely.
south or California or
Yeah, no, it is. It's one of those situations where you have to kind of just adapt where you are and understand where you're at. And I think that's kind of the thing that separates us, like as a school, is if you come up here, like you are choosing to deal with the situation, and I think that's kind of the difference. That's maybe why we don't get certain people as well.
yeah.
So it's like it's very much a choice. It's a mindset to be able to handle it all.
Yeah. I think it was a few years ago Tech went down to Texas to play somebody and it was like blazing hot down there. And it's just kind of crazy if you think about like what that team does in their preparation and their training in the environment they're used to and what Tech does, polar opposites,
Oh,
like climate
absolutely.
wise, especially
Yeah. Yeah,
the
my
weather.
I grew up in Montana, so I'm used to this kind of weather. Um, but like I can't imagine. Like at previous colleges I played at, guys that came from like California, then they would deal with Midwestern weather. It was just like, what a wild difference. Our long snapper this past season, it was his last year. He was from Florida, and it was like, total opposites of the spectrum.
Yeah. And like this winter, especially if they were here last winter, might not have been so bad. It was an easy winter. But this winter, I mean, we cracked the 300-inch mark, which it's been a while since we've done that. I mean, that can be a shock to anyone who's not familiar with snow.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it is certainly one of those things where like I was used to, cold weather and all that, but when I came up here, like this amount of snow was just mind-boggling. I mean, I just never had that much precipitation growing up. And so it really threw me for a loop, especially considering like how it's melted. Like I was walking level into my house at times, and there's like a 3 foot drop to the ground. And so when you walk level in, you're like, whoa, that's a lot of snow.
Yeah, it's really crazy, and it gets a little depressing. Like, in the end, it's like, man, I just
Yeah.
want to see some green grass.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you really appreciate like after being up here for more than a year now, I really appreciate the summers because the summers are beautiful up here too.
Oh, it's so worth
So
it.
to a certain point, like I think we're all to the point right now where it's so cold that it's just like, all right, now we're done. Like let's start warming up and enjoying the warmer weather. And
Yeah.
uh,
Right. And at Tech, you always get the frats. It'll be like 40 degrees and sunny, and they're going to be out on their roofs drinking beer with no shirt on. Like all it
yep,
takes is 40 degrees and sunny. And those guys, if you saw a picture, you'd be like, man, what is that, August or July? Nope,
yeah,
nope, nope. It's
yeah,
it's April. It's 40 degrees.
yeah. If you didn't see the snowdrift out in front of the house, you'd be going,
Right.
"Oh, this looks so comfortable." You
Yeah.
know, they just make it look easy.
Oh
But
yeah. Well,
yeah.
let's talk about your journey a little bit. I know you've got an interesting journey, and I really like getting different perspectives, people telling their stories and sharing those stories. So I know prior to your college, I mean, you worked as a ranch hand, you worked in an oil field, and then you,
Mhm.
you went to a different university, Briarcliff, before going to Michigan Tech. So you've got an interesting path on how you got to where you are right now.
Yeah. So I was very blessed to have a lot of experiences. I mean, I grew up in Montana for most of my life. My dad was a football coach, much of my young life. And then eventually didn't have that. So I always grew up around football. And I have 8 siblings. I had to think about that for a second. So most of my siblings are older than me. Consequently, I only have 3 that are younger. And so I got to be around them all of their sports careers and got to experience all that. And so I've actually been to 2 previous universities. So I grew up in Montana, as I said, and my dad felt that it would be better for my sports opportunities to move out to Illinois, because where we lived in Montana, just we didn't feel like was the best spot for having exposure. So we moved back to Illinois, and I went there for 3 years. I attended 2 different high schools while in Illinois. And then my junior year, I decided that, I just I didn't like where I was at. After COVID, it was really just messed up. I mean, COVID really threw everyone for a loop, and it really affected me. I mean, I was not, I was just not very good at home. I was having arguments and all that. So I just felt that it was better to move out to South Dakota. And I moved out there and really thrived. I mean, Spearfish is a beautiful area. I had never connected with teammates better than I connected there. It was just like I had a really great friend group, and I helped kind of build a better program because we ended I believe it was a 22 game ending losing streak while I was there, and I mean that was just massive. It was a huge accomplishment and felt great. But I kind of felt that I wasn't like in high school. And so I was like, I want to graduate early, and left, and ended up going to Chadron State out in Chadron, Nebraska, and attended there for a semester. And I loved Coach Long. Coach Long is a great coach. He coached my older brother at Black Hill State. Great staff, is wonderful, but I just really was not in a spot where I was confused about football, and I wasn't sure that that's what I wanted to do. And, I was like really focused on becoming a ranch hand, and that's what I've always wanted to do. So I stopped doing that in the spring, and over the summer became a ranch hand for some family friends out in Montana. Um, and then eventually was tired of not having any money from that, and decided to transition into the oil field. And that was just a wake up call. I mean, truly, that I wasn't in a bad spot or anything, but that those were the hardest hours I've ever worked. Longest days, I worked 20 days on, 10 off. And I only ended up working there for about 2 months. It was one of those things where I got along with some of the people I worked with. I worked with some really good people, but I also learned that that just wasn't really the environment that I really wanted to be around. That was very dangerous work. And there's just a lot of practices in the oil field that I didn't feel at 19 years old I wanted to be around. I didn't really want to be around a lot of the things going on. So I went back to Illinois and was like, hey, I want to go back to college. So I decided that, I kind of reignited my flame when I moved back and was able to see my little brother playing again. Felt like my passion kind of came back. And so I went back to Briarcliff. I played for one of my high school coaches from South Dakota, and that was great. I really liked it there. They were good to me. They treated me really well. But I just felt like that wasn't the level for me. I felt like I had better in me. Not to say that there isn't good at NAIA. I think that there are some very good athletes. I think that it is certainly not a level that people should look down on. Because I think like NAIA D3 and even D2 to a certain extent, I think people really look down on those levels and don't consider it as good as like D1. And frankly, I just don't think that that's fair. Certainly my experience, my little brother plays for Western Illinois, and seeing his experience being recruited, seeing my experience being, recruited through high school, It's one of those situations where, sometimes it's luck of the draw, sometimes it's just exposure. Like there's just so many factors that go into it. That I've played a lot against a lot of people at the D2 level that easily could go compete at the D1 level and be successful. I've seen a lot of people at NAIA that could go compete and be successful. So, but I just felt like I needed to go somewhere else. And that's why I came to Michigan Tech. I had a walk-on offer to go play where my little brother plays, but I really felt that I wanted to be somewhere where I could enjoy my college time and enjoy where I was going to be at more. And, I really loved the UP. It was funny because when I drove over the hill and I came into Houghton, it was one of those things where it was just like, there were stars in the sky and like the light was shining. It was gorgeous. It was just one of those moments that was picture perfect. And right after that, I was like, this is where I'm going. I didn't even have to go on the visit. It was just, I knew. But I had one of my coaches actually the other day was talking to me, and he told me, he's like, make sure you're talking to the guys, reminding them like your journey. And, because I think the thing is with everything I've like traveled, everywhere I've traveled, everything I've done, it's one of those things where I really had to make the decision to work to be where I'm at. Like I didn't just come straight out of high school, when I transferred to Briar Cliff. It was a situation where that was like the one chance I had. And they took a shot on me. And then I was able to get good grades and, work hard enough to show myself off on film. Because game one of that season for them, I broke my hand. And so for 7 games, I played with a broken hand. And I don't know if you've ever played with a broken hand, but it is not easy to do anything. um, and so it was one of those situations where, I had to really work harder to do well. And I think I had a great season there. So it was, the work ethic that I had to gain, the appreciation for what I was doing. I didn't take the hard work for granted. I think truly, like as an athlete, when you're going through like winter conditioning specifically, it's so easy to just be so downtrodden from the work you're putting in. And, when you're that tired and it's early mornings, you just be so beaten down. But all I could think about was at least I'm not back in North Dakota doing the oil field, like it's not an 18-hour day. Like running for the hour that I have to do it is not all that bad. Um, so it was a lot of really unique experience, and it's shown me a lot of different things that I think a lot of high school kids just don't have. And it's not against them. You just can't help that. Um, but it's made me appreciate more and made me work a lot harder and know that that's all it takes. Like, I think people say that a lot, but truly, like me being where I'm at was just something that I had to day after day decide and figure it out. So,
Yeah, that's a really, really cool journey. It shows that everybody's path is unique, right? Like
yeah,
not everybody's got the same path to, you've got 100 guys on the team, and your story is going to be way different than most of the other guys. And there's probably some other guys who have different unique stories too. And I think, right, like doing all that stuff, the maturity you gained, the hard work that you mentioned, all that stuff benefits you so much going to college that in a way, all those experiences, right, you're better off, right, for going through that than you would have if you just came right out of high school, right? Like coming right out of high school, often, right, we're all immature and it takes people a little while. Like some people, it takes them a semester to figure it out. And it's like, oh crap, like my grades are struggling a little bit. This isn't as easy as high school. I got to buckle down. And some people they transition to college really easy. Right? It's different for everybody. But all those experiences you had definitely, they're going to set you up for life too. Like all that
yeah,
stuff you had to work, the 18-hour days, that hard oil field work. I mean, that's like you said, it puts everything in its perspective too, right? When you're
oh, for
talking
sure.
about doing that running, and you think back to those oil field days. Um, it's not to the same extent, but I currently work at Houghton High School. I graduated from tech with a forestry degree, and I was in forestry. And we would have some long days once in a while. I mean, never that many in a row, but you'd have to work like a 16-hour day marking timber. It's super hot and humid, and it was hard work, but I'm better for it. You know what I mean?
Oh,
Like,
absolutely.
all the experiences that you have build you to the person you are today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I truly think that I like to pay attention to certain teachings and like I'm not like big into the motivation per se, but like I watch some people that's kind of their focus. And I truly am of the belief that as human beings, like it's innate to us that we need a challenge. Like I think that if people are lost in their life, oftentimes you can look at what you're doing, and if you're not being challenged, if you're not pushing yourself in some way, like they're just, if you feel lost. And like truly, I think some of the best times of my life have been times where I've been struggling, and not necessarily in a way where I'm super stressed all the time, like not financially or anything like that, but like, during football, when I'm going through those hard workouts, when I'm going through those hard lifts, like all those things are what I came out the other side going, I'm better for this. Um, at Tech, during the summer, we run up Mount Ripley, which is not easy. I mean, it is one of the worst things, and I do not recommend. But I would recommend if somebody really wants to challenge themselves and see what kind of they're made of, because it's one of those things where you feel so accomplished at the end of it. All the guys, we would go and we went and jumped in the canal, and that was amazing. I mean, it was one of those things that, like the camaraderie, when you go through challenges together, it really brings you together. And I think that, like, the military, I think has talked about that a lot of times, from guys that I've met that have been through, they talk about the challenges that they face that brings them closer to those guys, because you go through that sort of pain and anguish together, and no one understands that better than the guy next to you. And football is a lot that way. I mean, not to the same extent, certainly. But when you're going through those hard workouts and everything, I mean, you really bond over it, and you come out better from it. And it makes you appreciate, like we were talking about, like it makes you really appreciate everything you're doing. And it makes you understand the process better. And I don't think that there's anything better than just there's nothing worse than blindly following. So if you can understand, oh, this is how I got here through all this, then that makes things a little easier. So
Yeah. I think a good analogy for what you said is kind of like if you look at water, like water that sits stagnant, it gets gross. Like if you've got a pond that's just sitting there not moving, you get fungus and algae, all this crap growing in there, it gets real gross. But if you've got a nice flowing stream or river and you can have nice, clean, crisp water, it's moving, it's keeping busy. And it's the
mhm.
same thing that you mentioned with us as people. If you're not challenged, if you're just sitting around and everything is easy, then it can lead you to troubles. I mean, there's the old saying too, idle hands are the devil's workshop, right? If you're just sitting there with nothing to do, that's when problems come around. But like you said, when you're challenged and and it keeps you motivated and you want to keep conquering those challenges, usually good things come.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I don't think that anybody that goes for a run consistently will ever tell you that they're worse for it. I mean,
Right.
I personally don't like running. I always tell all my friends, if you see me running, you probably should run too, because there's some happening. So, but I think it's one of those things, like you were saying, I think that, the good things come from that. So,
Right, definitely. Yeah, most things, right? When you're lifting weights, it's very difficult. You've got that burn that, but when you're building muscle, obviously that burn is good. The
mhm.
pain is good. It's when you're running that pain is good, but you come out better. And it's the same in your job, in your maybe a personal relationship. Sometimes you got to go through that tough thing, but you come out on the other side, as a way better person. You got a way better relationship. You're stronger. Whatever whatever it is you're doing, you're always better for it. It's just
Absolutely.
applicable across life.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, I don't think that there's a single challenge that I've gone through, whether that's in the workplace or whether that's across sports or in school, that I can't really apply anywhere else. I think there's plenty of classes I've taken, for example, that I can apply to life, or the workplace particularly. But um,
That's a
I,
whole story for another day. We could
yeah,
talk
that's
about
just
that.
exactly, that's just a whole nother issue. We could go into a whole nother episode. Um, but I think it's certainly, it's good to understand like the different lessons and, the stories. And I think it's good to talk to people for that reason and understand like how they got here. And I love to do that to my buddies, talk about how they got to tech and how they, why they're here. Because like I said, I think to be at tech, you have to make the conscious decision that this is, and you have to love it. Like, I don't think if you are around here, you might not like every little thing, but certainly as a player, like you are going to love something about being here. Because if you don't really have an anchor, then you're not going to be here. You're going to leave. And we had guys do that. Guys left after the fall this year. And it's something that I always try and tell the freshmen coming in is, if you don't love football, then you're not going to be here. Like, and that's not me trying to be on them or get, like get them to leave or anything. But I think it's one of those things that they need to understand that, if you don't love it, you're going to resent every little thing that you're doing. And that's a hard one to apply to like the workplace, because I don't think I've never loved every little thing about my job. And certainly you get motivated by the financial well-being of that. But I think there is some applicable nature of that where, you know, you shouldn't hate every aspect. You shouldn't dread every aspect. There can be hard days and there's going to be good days. But not everything has to cause you dread. So,
Yeah. Well, let's talk about one of the other things you touched on, and that's the level of play that people look down on. Like you mentioned, NAIA, D3, and then even D2 to an extent. People look down on it. If it's not D1, what's the point? If it's not D1, you must not be that good. You weren't good enough to go D1. Like I saw, there's a video, and there's probably different renditions of it, but people pulled stuff that Dave Portnoy said about D3 football. He's just trashing D3 football. And then they like are throwing in all the people that have had success, Nick Sirianni. And then they throw in the lineman for the Broncos. And then like all of these people that ended up making it to the NFL, their coaches, or maybe they transferred up to D1. And kind of the point is, it's not bad football. And it goes into that journey. Everybody's journey is different. You might have a different reason. Maybe you want to stay close to family. Maybe they had the major that you wanted, and there wasn't a Division I program that offered you that had your major. I mean, there's a million reasons why. But I think if you truly watch, if you go to a D3 or NAIA game and you watch them play, you realize that it is good football. They are tremendous athletes. They're putting in a ton of work and they're doing it for less, right? There's no NIL at D3. You're not making this huge paycheck from the boosters.
no, no, no. I mean, I agree. I think those are all very good points. I mean, uh, there was a O lineman that was at the D3 level that I saw perform, I believe either in a pro day or in one of the pre-combine workout days, and he was going against some of the best D1 linemen, and he was kicking their butts. I mean, truly, I think it's one of those things that like you're either a big fish in a little pond or a big fish in a big pond in D1. I think certainly the players that are at that level are going to stand out more at the lower levels. And that's kind of always been my thought. For example, I thought that D1 was the way when I was little. But as I got older, I was like, I started to really understand that the people I was looking at, and I could still achieve the level of success I wanted, no matter what level I was at. It didn't matter, because there's still people that went on and did some great things, like you were saying, that were all from these different levels. I think that the thing is there's so much money in D1 right now that sometimes people will look at it, they look at the looks. It's very flashy. It's the money, it's the this, it's the that, it's the size, I mean, you look at some of the D1 guys, absolutely. I mean, like the guys that are the O linemen, they're 6'8", 400 pounds, I mean, those are big dudes, right? And so I think sometimes people are so visually, just enamored by people that sometimes they forget that there's skill. Like my dad always said, look like Tarzan, play like Jane. And, not to say that those guys aren't good. Absolutely not. But I know a lot of guys that are very good and very talented that aren't 6'8", 400 pounds. In fact, I know an O lineman that he is one of the greatest O linemen I've ever faced in my life as a D lineman. And, I've seen almost at any level, I would say that he is just as talented as any good D1 O lineman I've ever seen. And he's D2. In fact, I play with him. His name's Brandon DeVries. He's fantastic. He is good at his craft, focused, hardworking. But he's not 6'8", 400 pounds. Like I said, he just does his thing. He's very talented. He's very focused on the little things. Very good leader. And I don't know what his reasons personally for not going to a higher level if he had the opportunity. But I know personally from recruiting, oftentimes it's one of those things where they don't always consider skill. They want a lot of those intangibles as well. The level I played at in Illinois, I played against 3 different people that are either in the draft this year or are currently in the NFL. Logan Lee for Iowa just went to Steelers last year. And then Tyler Ellsbury, which was an O lineman for Iowa, is in the draft this year. Both very, impressive, but both very big people as well. Logan Lee's like 6'6", 290 pounds. I'm not 6'6", so it's one of those things where sometimes they look at, they can't teach height, but they can teach skill. So sometimes they'll recruit for that height and that build, and then they'll try and get everything else. And they can. I mean, they've got the funding, they've got everything else. And I think sometimes that's what it comes down to as well, is funding and support. At these lower levels, you just, you don't have as much money in the training program. So like, we don't have like a spa. We don't have like, a hot tub to go hop in. We don't have a cold tub per se. Like at Michigan Tech, we have cold tubs that we can fill up and everything, but it's not like we have one of those pool rooms that like, some of the big universities have. So there's certainly things like that where, there's just so much difference just in funding. And I think that what you said, honestly, that was most like really hit a key with me, was the fact that they are doing more for less. The guys that are at these levels are doing what they love, and they're putting more into it, I think, in a way. Like certainly at Tech, especially. I mean, and the other 2 places I played, it's not like they weren't good universities or anything like that. I think, to be in college, you have to have a certain level of effort and commitment. But at Tech, I mean, there's no degree that is easy. I play with multiple guys that are going to be mechanical engineers and all these other things, and they have to be very intelligent to do those things, to maintain good grades, to stay eligible. Like, it is one of those things where you are putting in a higher level of effort than some of these other people. I work nights as a bartender, for example. To work nights and then be able to go to class and then go to practice and then still get my homework done. It is a challenge to balance it all, and it can be very stressful. And at these lower levels, we don't, like you said, we don't have the option for NIL. We're not getting thousands of dollars. These guys are still having to go to work. They're still having to, do these other things that these other places just aren't having to consider. And that's great for them. It's not, I don't say this from a place of jealousy or anything. But I think it is one of those things that I have a sort of pride to be where I'm at and doing the things I'm doing, because I do think that I am putting in a higher level of effort. And I think that I can go compete personally. I believe in myself enough to know that I think I can go compete at that level. I don't think my skill has ever dropped. In fact, I think I've always risen to meet the expectance of the level I've been at. But it's one of those things that you choose to be where you're at for certain reasons, and certainly being at this level is the best choice I've made. I have no regrets, nor does anybody that I think I've played with ever would say this, say anything different. So
I think too, sometimes with D1 athletes, you get some that kind of just take it for granted, that because maybe they had 70 offers coming out of high school. They could have gone anywhere they wanted. They had the pick of the keep. They knew they were going to be starters. They've got money thrown at them. I mean, you see it once in a while when guys get drafted. I noticed it with March Madness, the selection shows. They showed a couple schools' rooms and guys weren't even excited. They were just sitting there. I mean, like, I feel like if my team made March Madness, I would have been up cheering. And there were so many of them that were guys that were just over the moon. You get drafted into the NFL, like, man, I'd scream and yell and hug my mom and my wife and my dad, and I'd be just like over the moon. But you look at some guys and they just like, yeah, I kind of knew it was coming. So you definitely have that drive at the lower levels. Do you know who Don Beebe is? He played for the Green Bay Packers and for the Buffalo Bills. He coaches at Aurora University now.
Yep.
And he talked about, he said he loves coaching at the D3 level, not having to deal with the messes that you have at D1. But he said that he would rather have, like, if we're talking offensive line, 5 smaller guys that have all the heart in the world and all the drive than 5 big guys that don't work as hard.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think there's something to be said about somebody that makes the conscious decision to be the hardest worker in any situation. I mean, I can't think of a situation where I think anyone would choose differently, frankly, in that scenario. I mean, I have played with guys that are on full rides and they're supposed to be the next best thing since sliced bread, and they're getting put on the field for a few plays, whereas the guy that's starting is just on the field because he wants to be there more. He's outworking them. And frankly, at the D line and O line position, those guys with more heart, they want to protect that quarterback on the O line, for example. That's a big thing. They take a lot of pride in that. They take it as a hit if that guy gets hit. And so who wouldn't want their quarterback being treated like, that's their little brother or whatever? I mean, truly, I think the best O linemen are the guys that get the most fired up when the quarterback gets sacked or gets hit or anything like that, And so when you have more heart, I mean, you're just going to want to win every rep. Like, you should be fired up. And I agree. I mean, I think truly, I've been at, I can think of a camp that I went to in high school where I was with guys that had, like, there was one guy with like 17 offers, I think. And just, it didn't seem to have as much heart or anything. And it was just a lot more innate to him. And that's fantastic that he had so much natural skill. But I just don't see that getting you as far when you don't also have the heart to go along with it, like you're saying. So I really agree with what he's had to say, frankly.
Yeah, right, for sure. Let's change gears a little bit and let's talk about the Gliac. I mean, I personally, and obviously I'm biased because the teams that I'm watching are Tech, and Northern and the Gliac's right here. But I truly think the Gliac is the best conference in the nation. And I'm not just talking football. I mean, I'm talking like across the board sports, because most of the schools, and if you look at football, you're going to have 3 to 5 teams in the top 25 and pretty much 2 in the top 10 every given year, Grand Valley and Ferris. And Saginaw Valley, Davenport, and you guys would be the other three that are often floating in that anywhere from 10 to 25 range. So you might have 5 teams in the top 25. I don't know how that's not the best conference. And often, I mean, Grand Valley could beat a lot of D1 teams. Fair State could beat a lot of D1 teams. Tech, I mean, they played St. Thomas for a few years there, and they competed with them. So, I think going to Tech, playing Gliac football, I mean, that means something in itself. You're going to play the best competition every single week.
Yeah. No, honestly, that was part of my decision coming here was the fact that it wasn't the Gliac. I mean, uh, talking to uh, Coach Metlack, I mean, that's exactly the speech he gave me when I transferred here, was that this is the best conference in the nation. And I played in the RMAC previously, which is over what Shadron is in. And, the Colorado schools are, always up there in the rankings and everything. But frankly, like we played South Dakota School of Mines this year, and I didn't think that they could really have held their own in the conference. Frankly, I just think that the level of competition is so much higher, and like you said, across the board, I think the Gliac proved that. I want to say Ferris won the women's basketball championship this year. I know that
Grand Valley.
Grand Valley. Okay. Yeah, my bad. I know that the best shot putter, for example, in the nation is from Grand Valley.
Their track programs are insane.
Oh, absolutely. And given, frankly, with the facilities, you should be attracting those sorts of people. I mean, they have beautiful facilities, and I love that for them. I truly think that the Gliac just kind of the level of competition here can only breed good things, and it can only breed better competition, and it only continues to get better because of the teams that are here. And I don't think that it's disrespected, but I also don't think it's given as much respect because I do think that, like you said, a lot of these teams could go compete with D1s. And frankly, I believe in Tech enough to know that we could go compete. I don't think we're going to, go beat out everyone or anything like that. But I don't think that this is the same level of D2 football that you see other places. I think that you'll get a team here or there. But I think consistently the Gliac attracts very good players and builds very good teams. So,
yeah, I mean, if you look at Tech's schedule, Tech's schedule, like last year, 7-4, but that was with overtime loss to Bemidji, who was a top 25 team. And then you're also putting a loss to Ferris and a loss to Grand Valley on there. So you got to put little asterisks next to those because you're not just losing any old game. It's like at the Division I level, if you lose to Alabama, you lose to Ohio State. Nobody likes to lose, but there's certain losses that don't look horrible on your resume because those teams are powerhouses. Obviously, you want to win every single week, but if you compete and you lose close to a team like Grand Valley, one of the best football games I've ever watched, Tech lost, I think, by 4 points, 21-17 against Grand Valley at home. I think it was back in the fall of 2019 or something like it was quite a few years ago, but it was just a great back and forth battle with a highly ranked Grand Valley team. And it was an awesome battle. And Tech was there every step of the way. And there have been quite a few games in the past few years where Tech has been neck and neck with Grand Valley and Ferris. So I think that says a lot about the conference too, right? That you see it with even Northern. I mean, they've been down the past few years, but those guys battle. They compete. Roosevelt, new to the conference, but those guys are competing every week in and out. It's not easy. There's no week off. You can't go into a game and think like, man, we don't have to worry about these guys. Like this is going to be a breeze.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, I don't think that anybody ever, like, especially for us, if we were to go from like Northern to Ferris, like we're not going, oh, that was a good game. We'll just kind of stroll into the next one. No, it's like we're going from Northern to Ferris. Like we know that our next game is always going to be against another great team. And so we don't prepare, I don't think we prepare the same. I think that certainly certain times we're, looking at games a little differently. We played Oshkosh this year. I don't think we necessarily look at it the same way that we look at, say when we played Ferris. But also, we didn't under expect Oshkosh. I think we all went into that game knowing, hey, we have everything to lose here. We cannot underperform. We cannot going in expecting to win. And I think that's the thing about tech is, being an engineering school and being, the team we are and being up here, like I've stated previously multiple times, is you choosing to be here. These guys are all very intelligent. They're all very, well thought out individuals. And so I think that allows us to all be on the same page going into games, is that, we're all kind of thinking the same thing. We're all thinking, through each decision that we're making, through the way we're, even as small as like eating prior to the game, like we're all trying to make the best decisions we can. We're trying to think through things. It isn't just blindly going into a situation. So I think you definitely gain an appreciation being in this conference, because you don't want to be, you don't want to be dumb, so to speak, when preparing. So
Yeah. And I think maybe a difference too like you mentioned, that you're kind of all on the same page. If you look at a Division 1 program, you're going to have guys that are working their butt off for their degree, but you're going to have other guys that just kind of know they're going to get drafted. So maybe their degree is not important to them. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think there's anybody that's going to tech. Like, I'm going to tech because I want to go to the NFL. Like, I'm not saying it can't happen, because it has happened. Joe Berger had a phenomenal NFL career, tech alum, right? I mean, it has happened. But it's just a different mindset, and you're all on the same page. You all know you're going to get a great education. You all are working for this hard degree. So you are on that same page, like you said. But it's sometimes it's harder to be a cohesive unit when you've got different priorities.
Yeah. I think certainly, there is the understanding we're all going to get hard degrees. We're all going through the hard things with football. We all are going to have to juggle all the different variables in our lives that, isn't necessarily happening elsewhere. And so that does help us, the understanding of that. I don't think anyone feels like there's no like animosity towards any one person because of this or that. And like you said, I think we all know we are going to get a great education, and that certainly was a effect on my decision to come here. And I think everyone can dream to do more and everything like that. And like that's certainly my goal. But we have Jace Daniels, Coach Daniels is great. He's been a wonderful coach, and I'm so glad to have him here. He talks about the NFL, and he says, it stands for the Not Forever League. He's like, so even if you do get the chance to go, he's like, it's not going to be the rest of your life. So you need that degree. And so I think that that's something very important to all of us, is that we have this degree, and that even given the opportunity to do that, like everyone dreams of, you still know that you have this great degree to fall back on, because you're only one injury away from not playing this sport ever again. So I think that that is a very big thing.
Yeah, nobody's got a crystal ball to know exactly how their career is going to pan out. Like, you look at guys like RG3 and like what could have been before the, serious leg injury, Joe Theismann and his leg injury, guys that end early, like Luke Kuechly. I mean, he just decided like it's not worth it. I got to focus on my family, the health. So you never know how, like, I mean, like, not forever league. That's a great way to put it. What are you going to do when you're done? Sports aren't going to last forever, no matter what sport you're playing. Maybe you can get a job in sports as a coach or as a broadcaster, but you can't play a sport forever. The human body can't hold up forever like that.
No. I mean, I just think about how many injuries I've had. Both of my rotator cuffs are constantly torn. I'm dealing with my right one right now. I broke my thumb, like I said, and I snapped that twice. I broke it again when it was in the cast during my 7th game of that season. I had a high ankle sprain last season that took me out of 2 games. I had never hurt my ankles ever in my life, but that happened then. My MCL in my left leg is missing from a high school injury. It's one of those things where you can never tell what the next day is going to bring. So you've got to play every day like it's your heart, like it's like it's your last. I mean,
Yeah.
I joke with my dad every time I talk to him. I'm like, hey, I feel like every day it's just, pulling a pulling a slot machine going, what's the next injury? What's going to happen? And so you just have to take it in stride. And you know, I I think that the thing that people always think of when it comes to like, goals and all that is everybody wants to like the big idea of don't, like burn the boats, like don't have there be another option. And I always had that mentality of like, I've been so focused on going to the NFL for my whole life that I wasn't as focused on my degree because I was like, well, I just don't want to give myself any other out other than to go do that. Um, and so I finally kind of reconsidered that and just thought there's nothing bad about getting a good degree and also focusing on those other skills. I can still kind of burn the boats, so to speak, and not be dumb enough to consider that, well, if I blow out my knee, I'm just done. So I think there's a fine balance there that many athletes struggle with finding. But I think for the most part, people, are realistic about that and try to understand that like they don't, like you said, they don't have a crystal ball. So I think we're all, and especially at Tech, I think we are all very realistic about that. We understand that, well, we have this great degree, no matter what happens in our life, that we always have that. So
Yeah. And I think sometimes you don't appreciate the sport you're playing until you can't play it, whether that's because you graduated and you're just done or whether you got hurt. Right. Because I don't know. I feel like for a lot of athletes, if you were given the choice, you can get injured tomorrow and never play your sport again, or next year your team won't win a single game, but you'll get to play every single game. Would you play another season with no wins, or would you never play your sport again? I mean, personally, if I love my sport, I'm playing whether we win or not because I just love the sport. So, I mean, obviously you want to win every game, but just getting to play your sport every day is a blessing,
yeah,
because like you said, you never know when it's going to be your last game for whatever reason. It might not be injury. It just
no,
might be I've graduated from college and my road has ended. I don't have an opportunity.
yeah, and I agree. That was kind of my decision to come back to college. Actually, was when I was working in the oil field, and my dad was a great athlete in his time, and so he has all this knowledge of what he did. And when he got done with football in college, he had an opportunity with the Lions and with the Rams, and kind of played that out with his football route, and then went and tried to be an Olympic thrower and made it to the Olympic trials and did all that. And he just gave me the knowledge of like, you can't do this for the rest of your life. So why waste this time? Go play it out and do what you can. He's like, I don't ever want you to look back on it and say I could have done this or could have done that. That's always been my biggest pet peeve when I talk to people as well. Is I think as a college athlete, you have all these people that come up to you and they're like, well, I could have gone here. Well, it's like, I'm sorry, man. If you had that opportunity, you would have done it. Because that's what I did. At least to me, like I had the opportunity, so I did.
Yeah.
And so I think it's one of those things that, you need to kind of step back and have the perspective to go, wow, I really am glad I'm here. And, you know, I want to be here. Cause like you said, I personally agree with like your analogy there. I would certainly rather play even whether winning or losing. It's way more important for me to be on the field at all. You know, so
Yeah. Right. You got to look at every decision. Am I going to regret this if I don't do it?
yeah,
And if you are, then do it.
yeah, yeah. And you can't let fear hold you back. I mean,
Yeah.
I think that was my big thing is, I always overanalyzed the decisions I was making, especially coming out of high school. I was like, well, what's this going to do for me? Well, am I going to have this opportunity? Well, who cares? You don't know. Like, you don't know. I you might have a coach that comes 2 years into your career that will help you do the things you've always wanted to do, but you can't see that, or, with the transfer portal, what it is, you can go somewhere where you're more wanted. I've taken advantage of that, and I think it's one of those things that you just need to make the best decision at the time. And looking back on it, you might go, well, I could have done this or could have done that, but hindsight's 2020. So why fear the decision? Just jump into it full bore and pour your heart into it. Because you will never, even if it fails, the things you will have learned from that experience will far outweigh not having done it at all.
Yeah, that's perfect. That's perfect advice. Why don't we wrap up the episode? Kind of some non-football, like what are your hobbies? What do you like to do?
Well, I grew up in Montana. I mean, hunting, fishing. I love to ride horses as well. Like rodeoing, doing that sort of thing is something I always really wanted to do and get into far more than I did. But hunting, fishing, hiking, doing the outdoor things are just my favorite things in the world.
Yeah. If
Especially
I had
up
to
here.
guess, that's what I guessed.
Yeah, I mean, certainly, I don't think I looked like somebody, but honestly, the other thing that is the total opposite is I love to do anything computer related. Like I kind of explained, um, my degree is mainly in AI, and I'm just really loving getting to learn all that and dive deep. And it's made getting my degree far much more enjoyable when I am just so enthralled in what I'm doing, and having good professors that help with that. And so truly, like, programming is becoming something I really enjoy, and it's kind of a hobby now. So those are the
Yeah.
things I really enjoy.
It's funny you say Montana and ranching and rodeo because right now I'm deep into Yellowstone and that's all I
Oh,
can think
absolutely.
about when you say that. I'm in
Yeah.
I'm in the fifth season, so I'm
Okay.
almost done. But yeah, I can't help but think of John Dutton and the Dutton family and
Yeah. That's the dream, me and my little brother, since we were little, we didn't have much money always, but we always have said, and we'll still stand by it. Our largest goal is to just buy all the land that we can and build a sort of like a family ranch, like the Dutton family. It's just we had this dream before that was a thing, but um, you know, and have all the cows and do all the things. That's just, I don't think there's anything more rewarding than living off the land and working with animals. I my dad being teacher all his life, it was the same thing for him with like working with kids and helping guide, and it was just the same sort of thing. And there was nothing I loved more than being a ranch hand. Just there's not much money in it, so it's just how it goes. But
yeah. Do you do any hunting up here or any fishing? Have you done any since you've been up here?
so funny enough, I've not fished up here at all. Actually, I take that back. I did a little bit of ice fishing. I've only gone twice, and it was up here with a buddy of mine. I loved that. That was really, really fun. I love to fish up, but I just have not. I never really. I worked so much this summer, and I wasn't here all summer. But certainly this year, I'm going to get into it more. But hunting, I've done quite a bit of. I do a lot of predator hunting, and I did a little bit of deer hunting. Fortunately, I didn't get any deer, but that's why they call it hunting, not shooting. So that's just kind of the name of the game. So certainly at least hiking and getting out. I mean, that's one of the best things to do up here. I think that like exploring the UP is just amazing. I mean, the scenery, the woods. I mean, there's just, and the like even the old buildings. It's so cool to me to just drive around and see the old structures and see the old development. I mean, that is just so cool to me.
Yeah, if you like history, you like outdoor recreation, this is the place for you. I mean,
Yeah.
because you've got all of it. There's so much history with the mining industry. I mean, up and down the whole Cunard Peninsula. I mean, if you want to venture over to Marquette too, there's obviously, but like right here in our backyard, there's so much. And then, yeah, I mean, waterfalls, hiking
Yeah.
trails, mountains. I mean, we've got it all here. Rivers, lakes, streams. You've got
Mhm.
everything. If you want to hunt, there's endless opportunities to hunt so many different things. Small game, you can hunt some crazier stuff too. You want to do bear hunting, you want to hunt deer, You want to hunt rabbits, whatever you want to hunt. You want to do
Yeah.
some pretty intense fishing. There's so much to do. You want to ski, snowboard. I mean, the if you like to be outdoors, the opportunities are endless.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely.
so
And
I
tech
think that's
helps
what attracts
almost.
people.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that then that was certainly what attracted me, as I said previously. I mean, I Houghton reminded me so much of the town that I grew up in Montana, and has way more to do than what I had. I mean, Montana, where I grew up, was way different, but it made me appreciate this. And now that I'm older and having moved as much as I have, because I've lived, like I told you before, I've lived almost everywhere, it seems. Um, it's one of those things that it's so great to be able to be like, well, what do I want to do today? During the winter, I can go snowboarding. During the summer, I go swimming all the time, and I didn't hate swimming. It just wasn't something I did a lot. But now, shoot, every day I'm probably going to jump in the canal or go find a beach and go enjoy it. I mean, it is just amazing. So,
Yeah. I love visiting cities. They're great to visit, but
mhm.
I wouldn't want to walk out of my house and like, oh man, traffic's nuts. There's people
Oh,
everywhere. Like it's great for a few days, but I love walking out, being that fresh air. You look up at the night sky. There's no light pollution. I mean, you get a
mhm.
perfect view of the stars. You go to some of the different beaches we've got, and people come here as tourists and they're just amazed, right? I mean, like at the tree colors. And if you live here, like I've lived here my whole life, I mean, very blessed to have lived here my whole life. Sometimes when you fall into that trap, you take it for granted. And then you do see those tourists come and you realize, like, these people, I mean, like, this is the first time they've ever experienced anything like this. Like, we get bored driving along the highway. It's like all we have to look at is trees. But some
Yeah.
people, it's like, man, I've never seen so many trees before.
Yeah. Honestly, and that's how it was for me. I mean, in Montana, I lived in what's called a high mountain desert. So, it was just all plains. It was like all wild wheat and everything. And I appreciate the beauty of that. But I appreciate the beauty of the trees. There's so many people that I know here that grew up here. And I'm just like, man, like, how do you not just love this waterfall? Or how do you not just love being able to walk into the woods and lose yourself? And they're just like, oh, I just do. And I get it. But I think it's one of those things that truly, when a lot of these people move away, I've met so many people that I met a guy the other day that moved to California and then moved back up here. And he was like, I just missed it so much. And you gain that perspective of like, oh, wow, I didn't appreciate that enough. And there's a sort of beauty in that. And so you start to see the beauty in things a little bit more once you gain that. So,
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Very well said. I think that's a great place to wrap it up. Pierce, it's great. It's a pleasure talking to you. I appreciate you taking some time and hopping on.
yeah, yeah. Thank you very much for having me. It was great talking to you.
Thanks for listening. Please stay tuned for more episodes soon.